every painful experience and problem that you've gone through over the course of your entire life has been preparing you for a very important assignment. Our trials are a refinement process. Gold miners have a refinement process to purify gold. They take chunks of earth out of the ground, and this gold that's oftentimes mixed with other minerals and impurities. And they take this gold and they put it in a fiery furnace, and they turn up the heat to 1,000 degrees Celsius. And when the gold begins to melt, that's when it releases the impurities so that they can rise to the surface and be skimmed off. And the refinement process is repeated over and over again, and the heat is turned up hotter and hotter and hotter until finally all the impurities have been brought to the surface and dissolved, so that all that's left is pure gold. Just like in our lives, that fiery furnace that we go through is our painful experiences, the setbacks, the trials, the painful problems. And all of it is meant to bring to the surface within us any old fears, any old limiting beliefs, any wrong motives, any wrong actions, so that it can be released off of us, so that all that's left of us is pure gold. And when we've reached that state of pure gold, that's when we're ready to receive our calling. But we all have a choice. We can say no to our calling, say no to that work that we were born to do, and just stay on the same path that we've been on. Or we can say yes to our calling, get off the fence, and go all in. And I can tell you, if you do say yes to your calling, it won't be easy. There will be more refinement, more trials on the journey. But I can tell you, it is the most amazing, joyful, transformative experience that you can ever imagine. You see, I believe that if you've been through that fiery furnace, you went through a painful challenge, and you were transformed by it, and you overcame it, and you know that you have a message, or you have a gift, a story, some type of a message that can help others. I believe that you are meant to be famous. It's because you've got an important calling for your life. And I'm not talking about the kind of fame that is ego-driven or trying to prove something. I'm talking about becoming more visible so that you can help more people. I want to share my story with you. I was born to a single mom. I didn't have a dad. And when I was 3 years old, my mom met a man in the military. He was in the Marine Corps. And they ended up getting married, and he wanted to adopt me. And so I was raised in a big blended family with 6 kids. And in our home, when I was growing up, you went to church every Sunday, no matter what. And I was grateful for that because I really started building my faith at a very early age. And because of that, we were moving around a lot because of being in a military family. And I was always the new kid at school. And of course, I was bullied relentlessly from 4th grade to 8th grade. I remember this one time, this boy in my class in 4th grade, he was calling me this name and pointing at me, and I was crying. And I felt embarrassed, I felt rejected, and I felt worthless. And all I ever really wanted was to be accepted and to be liked and to be loved. And because I was so little and young and impressionable, I misinterpreted that experience, and I linked up a limiting belief that I am worthless and I am powerless to do anything to change that. And pretty soon, I had another experience. I was always seeking my dad's approval, and I got an A on a test, and I couldn't wait to get home from school and tell my dad about the A. So I rushed home, And it was after dinner. I remember seeing my dad sitting in his recliner. And I walked up to him and I said, "Dad, I got my test back." And I handed him the paper. And he looked at me and he looked at the paper. It had a big A on the top. And I was standing there waiting on my pat on the back for a job well done. And he said, "You know, if you would have studied a little bit harder, you would have gotten an A+. But better luck next time." As an adult, I realized that my dad was just doing the best he knew at the time. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to make me be my best. But as a little girl, a kid, my brain wasn't fully developed back then. And so I misinterpreted that experience. And so it further ingrained that old limiting belief that I must be a worthless, incompetent loser if I can't get an A+. And when a young woman moves through her life believing that she is worthless and powerless, she subconsciously begins to create situations in her life that reflect that. So by the time I was 16 years old, I was in an abusive relationship. I was pregnant. Pretty soon I dropped out of high school and got married. And my dream of going to college took a sharp detour. When I was 23 years old, I finally found the courage to leave. One day, I remember the moment, I secretly began to pack a few of our things. I had 2 little kids at the time. And I packed our things, and we quietly snuck out and left, and I moved to Indianapolis, Indiana in 1995. When I arrived in Indianapolis, I didn't have any money. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any furniture. I was starting over completely from scratch. How many of you have ever been starting over from scratch completely? That's where I was. I got a job in cosmetics, and I worked my way up to management. And I loved my work. I enjoyed it, but it always seemed like it was always a struggle financially. There were times where I paid our bills, and I didn't have enough money left over to buy groceries for me and for my kids. And the pain was so great for so long, this constant struggle of paying a bill and then before the lights got cut off and then trying to buy a few groceries and then I got to make the house payment. I was so stressed out, and finally, after several years, I had reached the end of my rope. I was done. I knew my life had to change. And I remember the moment something shifted inside of me. I was in my living room, and I was pacing back and forth, and I was so angry, and I was pounding my fist, and I said, "Never again. I am going to change my life for the better. I am going to earn more income for me and for my kids, and I am not going through this anymore. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's done." I was in a place of resolve. It was going to happen. And that's when I became a high achiever. And I started studying successful people. I started honing my skills in sales and marketing. And I started to read more books. And not only that, I remember I was searching for answers. I didn't know how to get there. And I bought my first self-help book. And the book was called Live Your Dreams by Les Brown. And I remember reading this book. I'd never read a whole book before in my entire life up until that point. And I was reading the author's story, and he shared his story of overcoming a poverty situation and overcoming adversity and rising up to extraordinary success. And I remember thinking to myself, if he can do it, maybe I can too. And I continued to grow and to learn. And pretty soon, I switched careers. I began selling real estate for a new home builder. And I started to apply what I was learning. And it worked. I went from earning $9 an hour and struggling to barely even have food on the table at times to generating $9 million in sales in selling new homes and winning Salesperson of the Year. It was an incredible, thank you. And during that time, something was pulling me towards something more. You see, I had this idea for an invention in the back of my mind. It was a lip gloss that could curb appetite. And I wondered, could this be the next big thing? I don't know. I decided to overcome my fears and go for it. I just tried it. I spent a year developing this product. I turned in my 2-week notice at my marketing job at this new home builder, scared to death, and I started my own business to launch my lip gloss, and it began to take off. My product, Thin Gloss, was sold in retail stores across the U.S. It was sold in a few stores in other countries. And then I got an opportunity to be on the hit TV show Shark Tank. I was featured on Fox News, NBC Daytime, Fox Business Network, the Los Angeles Times newspaper, Indianapolis Star newspaper, and so many other amazing things. I was so grateful. It was incredible. And then 6 years into it, I got to a place where I was sold out of inventory. And I was at a crossroads, and I was searching for what is my real purpose. And after a lot of prayer, I made the decision to close that business. And I stepped into the next chapter of my life, and I started my consulting business. And when as I reflect back on my lip gloss business, I had some big wins. I won some awards. I attracted my own 15 minutes of fame with all the publicity, all the amazing things. But I also learned life-changing lessons because of setbacks and failures. And I got a $1 million licensing deal, and then they canceled the whole deal 5 months later. It led me to this rock bottom moment, but that drew me closer to God. And that is when I finally was able to heal that core wound of feeling worthless and not good enough. It transformed my life. Thank goodness it happened. I was being refined and prepared for my real calling. And before I leave, I want to leave you with this. It's an invitation. If you have been in the fiery furnace, if you've overcome some painful challenges, a setback, and you were transformed by it, and you know that you have a message, a story, some skills that can genuinely help people, I believe that you are meant to be famous and be seen. I invite you to say yes to your calling and go all in and be more visible so that you can help more people and fulfill your calling. It's time, and you're ready. The world needs you. Thank you.